Welcome to the Astoria Film Festival Spotlight interviews. Today we're speaking with Melissa Jean-Baptiste, teacher, writer, filmmaker, and financial expert with a massive social following under Millennial in Debt. Her web series, Millennial in Debt, won our Best Drama Web Series at the 2019 Astoria Film Festival. How did the whole Millennial in Debt thing get started?
Well, I was in debt.
You were in debt.
Yes, so I'm a first generation person. So for anyone who watches and doesn't know what that means exactly, it means my parents were born in Haiti. And then when they came over here, my brothers and myself were the first to really navigate school and getting jobs and applying for financial aid and things like that. So I was the first to go up to college and I took on a lot of student debt. And then the first 3.5 years after I graduated, I was kind of just like, okay, I have this debt. I'm just going to pay the minimum, see what happens. And then when I was 25, I tried to move out of my parents' house. I was looking at like getting a mortgage, and the retail like broker was just like, oh, well, you're only approved for like 100,000. And I'm like, what? I'm like, how? Like I have really good credit. I'm like, I pay all my bills. And he's just like, well, you have a really high debt to income ratio. And before he mentioned that, I'd never even heard of that before. I didn't know what that meant. And I just thought that if you had debt, you paid your payments, that you were fine. You were adulting. That's what was my understanding. And so when I started looking into debt to income ratio and what that meant, and I called Sally Mae, who was one of my providers, and they're like, oh, well, you have this balance left and it's going to take you 30 years to pay off the balance. And I'm just like, what? Talking about? I'm like, I didn't even borrow this amount of money. So at this point, the principal, which what I borrowed, had gained so much interest that my payments didn't even really make a dent in that balance. And I was confused. I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I'm like, I can't be paying this for 30 years. Like, I don't want to live in my parents' house for the next 30 years. Yes. So I started to like learn more about money, how to use it as a tool, how to save, how to pay this debt down more aggressively. And it was really lonely. I felt really alienated. And I'm like, no one that I graduated with is talking about this. I'm like, am I the only one who's going through this? And so I started to talk to a few more people about it. I started talking to my best friend, who Shakira, she was at the festival with me. And we just started talking. And then I started like writing down people's stories, like loose, just like, oh, I'm like, oh, this happened. And I'm like, it would be kind of cool if I just put everyone's stories together into like this like thing. I'm like, I don't know what it'll be, yes. But I'm like, I just want to put everyone's stories together. And it was actually during Regents Week at school. And so I didn't have to proctor, I didn't have to teach, but I had to be in the building. So I went into a teacher's lounge and I was like, I'm just going to write. Like, I'm
that's brilliant.
Right? I'm like, I'm going to see what pops out. And so I'm like writing by hand because I love writing things out first. And I'm writing and writing and writing. And then I'm like, I think I want to turn this into a script. And I had zero idea what that meant. I'll give it a shot. I wrote it up on Celtics and it was just born that way. Like I was like, this is like kind of cool. I want to do something with it. And so my best friend was like, let's do a web series. Like let's figure like how that is. And we just navigated that and it kind of just grew from there. And it's so like exciting to see where it's growing, but that's where it came from, me being alone and like grabbing everyone's stories.
It's all about Regents Week.
Yeah, and Regents Week. I'm just like, I'm very thankful for that like time to just be in the teacher's lounge and write.
How did your social media presence start? Like, was it a deliberate thought to build a following before the web series, after the web series?
So what I did, I was like, I don't know what to call myself. I'm like, all the really cool Instagram names are gone. So I'm like thinking. And then like all of a sudden I'm like, oh, well, I am a millennial in debt. So I'm like, let's see if that's available. And it was. And so when I created the Instagram, I was just using it to show like ideas of like what I was writing and then ideas of where we could film. And then I was like, oh, I think I need a filmmaker. And people were like, oh, sending me suggestions. And so when Millennial in Debt's social media presence was growing, I wasn't really educating anyone yet about money. I was just showing them like the behind the scenes on the web series. And then people started saying, oh, wow, like I learned a lot from that episode. I'm like, what? I'm just like, okay. And then so I started sharing more like tidbits of things that I knew weren't really prevalent, like people didn't know easily. And then I would post things and like so many people would repost and share and things like that, like about student loans. And it just kept ballooning. And I'm like, okay, like I'll keep like giving these little tidbits and pieces. And it keeps getting bigger and bigger, which is so exciting. But I'm just like, what if I run out of ideas?
One of the things you tackled in the web series was mental health issues in the Black community, which I just see so few representation of, and
Right.
it really struck me. So do you want to talk a little about what prompted you to kind of do that?
Yes. So the first season that we established like a following and just people knowing who we were, we focused mostly on student debt and money and things like that. And then with the second season, we really wanted to expand it further into how money can really affect a lot of other aspects of your life. And so my best friend, she actually wrote that episode because she does deal with a lot of mental health issues as well as myself. I think it was really crucial to the episode. It was to show how things appear so normal, right? It's like, oh, you have a job, you have a boyfriend, you have friends, everything is fine. No, you can be living a perfectly, completely normal appearing life and still be dealing with so many issues that others don't know and aren't aware of. So I wanted to make sure that it was just giving off of like, this is an everyday life, everyday occurrence. Something that I think is shied away from a lot, especially in the Black community. And she's just like, I think we should do an episode specifically about this. We should tackle it head on and not like just like little snippets. Like we should just tackle it straightforward. And I'm just like, okay. I was very uncomfortable and scared, which is the best time to push through. It's you always push through your fear. And so I'm just like, I don't know. It's like so different from what we do. And we try to make everything so funny. And she's just like, Melissa, I'm telling you, she's like, people will like it. Let's do it. And so I'm like, okay. And so she wrote it and we did it. And I think it's actually one of the best and most beautiful episodes that we have. And I think it's really important, especially with when Millennial and Debt started, that things aren't kept as, oh, this is only happening to you, or, oh, this is only your experience. And I think the more that we open up the platform and allow people to share their story and share their experiences and see other people dealing with the same things, I think it's really going to help veer away from the stigma of, oh, just say a prayer, or, oh, just be strong. And it's like, not really. That's not how it's gonna go. So I'm actually really happy that she pushed for that episode, and it's been one of our best, most well received episodes.
With Black Lives Matter,
Yeah.
And you being a teacher, what have you been able to discuss with your students? What have how have they been able to discuss, and how have you been feeling about it? So kind of a big question, but.
Okay. So when the initial protests began, I felt that I didn't have the tools or the emotional wherewithal to kind of navigate my own feelings and navigate the feelings of my students, or provide them with the opportunity or platform to express how they're feeling or what they're going through or their thoughts. And so that first week was really difficult, and I kind of just shied away from having any open conversations with anyone, not friends, not family, not my social media following. I was just to myself and trying to wrap my brain around what's going on. And that following week, which ended up being our last online school week, like last digital classes, we were able to link in the Black Lives Matter movement and conversations with the two books that we just finished, Glass Castle and The Hate U Give. And I was really just so proud that they were able to take over the conversation, and I didn't even have to do much but be a facilitator, and they were able to navigate such adult conversations that at their age I would have never been able to do. Also, really, I'm enjoying seeing them come into their power. I think younger generations have never really realized, except for this one right now, how powerful they are and how much change they can make. And even before the protests and the Black Lives Matter movement really taking off, they were doing march outs for the gun control laws not being passed. They were doing march outs for climate change and things like that. And they have such strong leaders in their generation to help lead them through these movements. I find it not only fascinating, but just so like motivating. I'm very thankful that they were able to do that. And I'm also thankful for my administration giving them as many opportunities as well to voice their thoughts and to help create programs for our upcoming school year. So I'm really looking forward to what's going to happen in September and how it's going to, alter the environment of the school and just make it a much better, stronger place to be for everyone. Even before all this, I was really always afraid to tackle anything with race because I didn't want to, I guess, offend, which is such a disgusting thought to have, like saying it out loud. So I'm just like, okay, well, I'm in the financial niche and I people say I'm a financial guru, so I can only talk about money, and that's what people follow me for. And then when all of this broke, I'm like, I'm a human. They follow me because I'm a human, and I have to voice my human emotion, and I have to share how I'm feeling, outside of just money. And I'm just growing more into my social media voice and not trying to appear like, look at this perfect graphic about money, but more just like, let me tell you about, the chaos of money, but also just like, here's what's happening in the world. So it's definitely a growing process that I'm enjoying.
Anything you would like to add before we wrap up about anything at all?
Well, I just want to say thank you for having me. And we are going to be expanding Millennial soon. We are working on some things in the background, so coming really soon. More financial assistance for people and like access for people who wouldn't normally know things about like buying a home or how to ask for a raise, things like that. So we're going to start focusing more on those things soon.
And people can find you at?
At Millennial in Debt on Instagram, Millennial in Debt on YouTube, and on Twitter, Mill in Debt, because of the character limitations.
That is Twitter.
Yes, it's all right.
Thank you so much, Melissa.